What is that smell? I am definitely getting a hint of a deal. Oh wait, it's more than a hint. Yeah, these are the best deals, and not just this season, but all year long. In all seriousness, the smartest shoppers know that you get the brands you love with the most savings and cash back with Rakuten. And I know I'm certainly interested in sniffing out those deals. Start getting cash back at your favorite stores like Urban Outfitters, Petco, even Expedia, and getting cash back doesn't mean you have to miss out on sales because those can be stacked right on top. It's easy to use and based on a simple idea. Stores pay Rakuten for sending them shoppers, and Rakuten shares the money with you as cashback through PayPal or check. Smells like a perfect deal to me. Download the free Rakuten app and never miss a deal. Or go to Rakuten.com to start getting the most bang for your buck. That's Rakuten.
Uh-oh, the last cookie.
You can get a new box of cookies in as fast as an hour with Walmart Express Delivery.
Are you my guilty self-conscience?
No, I'm the voice offering you promo code EXPRESS for free delivery on your first order.
Hey, who ate my cookies?
You mean, these cookies?
Order now. Welcome to your Walmart. Promotion valid for first express delivery order. $50 minimum subject to availability. Restrictions apply.
Hello, and welcome to Vulgar History, a feminist women's history comedy podcast. And guess what? It's March. March is Women's History Month. And I mean, on this podcast, we're doing women's history 12 months out of the year. Like every single week, it's Women's History. But Women's History Month is a time when some people who maybe don't think about it as much start thinking about it. And I'm always really excited every year to see like who maybe Vulgar History is going to be included on some list somewhere of like women's history podcasts you should listen to. And I'm excited that this year it is. We're on a list on Amazon Music right now. So I really wanted to shout out to Amazon Music for featuring Vulgar History this month, Women's History Month. We're doing feminist women's history. And so I just want to say, check out Vulgar History on Amazon Music and check out their other lists there of other podcasts that might be of interest to you if you're interested in women's history, which obviously you are because you're listening to this show. And I do just want to take a short moment, a little PSA moment, to let everybody know that I'm living in Canada. I know a lot of listeners are in the United States. And I just wanted to let you know that I see the nightmare you're living through, and it sucks. And where I see the role of this podcast is kind of fun distraction, and also reassuring and maybe like a cozy thing that you can look forward to every week. And that's what the show is going to be. But I did just want to mention that because we're doing these episodes and we're talking about, stories from history and stuff, it doesn't mean I'm not aware of what's happening in the world. And so to my American listeners, like I see you, my heart is with you. It's all fucking crazy. And this podcast is going to be here for you every week to give you a little moment of tits out sunshine. And so anyway, this week, I'm so excited. I was excited about this book when I saw that it existed. I was so excited when this author agreed to be on the podcast. And now I'm so excited for you to hear this amazing conversation that I had. So Veronica Chapa is the author who we're talking with today. She's a Mexican-American author, and her novel Malinalli is just coming out. Let me double check. The publication date, March 11th. So you're listening to this and you should be able to pre-order or to order that book. You should be able to order. I was just double checking the date when you're listening to this. Hell yes. Go out, buy this book, place a library hold on it. If your library doesn't have this book, message your library and suggest that they buy it. That's a thing you can do, by the way. I work for a library myself personally, and I can say, if your local library doesn't have a book you want to read, there's always 100%. Every library has a form somewhere on their website where you can suggest a book. So anyway, this book is called Malinalli. And when I first saw the title, I was like, Malinalli? But that's one of the names of this figure who we've talked about on the podcast a few years ago in the International season. I called her Malintzin in that episode. She's also known as La Malinche. And Malinalli is one of her names. And I saw the title and I thought, oh, I wonder if this is a book. It couldn't possibly be a book about that person. could it? And it is. It's a beautiful, gorgeous novel that combines narrative fiction with some magical realism, with some fantasy moments, with like historical fiction, all of which to just really explore and examine and celebrate the story of this woman who I did a podcast about her. So as I said, a couple of years ago during the International season. If you haven't heard that episode, briefly, we describe the story in this interview, but I'll just let you know that she, Malinalli, was an indigenous woman, a Nahua woman who lived in what we now would call Mexico, pre-colonialization, before the Spanish got there. She lived there. And then the Spanish got there while she was still there. And then she wound up, and we'll talk about in this episode how that happened. She wound up being a translator for Hernán Cortés, who was kind of a famous / notorious person who came from Spain to colonize North America. She became his translator because she had a command of like 4 different languages. She was very, very talented, but also she's really talented at speaking and translating. She was with him when he went to the great, huge metropolis of Tenochtitlan, where he met with Montezuma, who was the emperor there. And this is kind of what she's best known for doing. And then in history, well, not even in history, just sort of like in folktales, in slang, her name, especially the calling her La Malinche, became known as kind of a notorious person. Some people saw her as like, it was because of her that the Spanish were able to conquest Mexico, which is not true. I mean, she was translating for Hernán Cortés, but a lot of other things led to that happening, including like Spain sending over armies who had guns and horses and ships, and also smallpox. But she, like so many situations, and we talk about this in the episode, she, a very young woman, she's like a teenager, gets blamed for this. And so in this book, Malinalli, Veronica Chapa, is giving her voice back. She is telling her own story. She is the main character. She is the hero of this book. And so, as described by the book itself on the book's website, this is the first novel to reimagine and reinterpret Malinalli's story with the empathy, humanity, and awe she's always deserved. And this was published by Simon & Schuster's, has an imprint called Atria. Atria has an imprint called Primero Sueño Press, which just started up. And we talk about that a bit in the interview as well, because it's a press that is celebrating and sharing the stories of Latine culture. And so this book is just so perfect for that imprint. And Veronica is like, I talk to a lot of authors on the show, and I don't know if she is up there with the people who are the most passionate and the most dedicated to the person that she's writing about. And it's an emotional conversation, and it's a real conversation. And I think you're really going to get something out of this. So this is my interview with Veronica Chapa, author of the new novel, Malinalli. Welcome, Veronica Chapa, author of the new novel, Malinalli, which tells the story of a figure we've talked about on this podcast, but it was a while ago. And everyone listening to this today hasn't necessarily heard that episode of the podcast. And the people who did, it was a while ago. So part of what I'm excited to talk about you today is just to retell the story of this real life figure who your novel is about. But I'm also so interested to know how you came to write the novel. Actually, I should say welcome, Veronica.
Hi, Anne. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
We're both so excited. Yeah. So tell me, actually, my first question for you, just to like set the scene. How do you remember when you first heard? Oh, I want to clarify too. So Malinalli is one of the many names that this person is known by. She's also known as La Malinche, Malintzin, Doña Marina. When did you first hear about this figure? Do you remember?
I first heard about her. I didn't know who she was when I was little, probably in grade school. And I overheard a conversation, and I heard someone say the more popular name, La Malinche. And it came out like La Malinche. And it sounded, it was like came out like a slap. It was said with such contempt. And it was like, what? Who? And then it was followed by a swear word. I sort of understood the Spanish, the swear word, what that meant, sort of. And I was like, oh, what? Like, what did she? I knew then it was a woman that they were talking about, and it's like, what did she? Who is she? What did she do? And that was just like the little seed that was planted in my head. And then later, in my like late teens, I read Bernal Diaz del Castillo's history, the true history of the conquest of New Spain. So I'm reading about the conquest, and there she is. And the image that stuck out in my head was of this young woman. In my book, she's 18 years old, but historians think she may have been as young as like 15. This young woman who was gifted to Cortés. She was after a battle, and the Mayas lost, and they gave Cortés fine cotton cloth, gold, food, and 20 women. Malinalli was one of those women, so she was a war prize. So she's handed over during Cortez's journey to the Mexica city of Tenochtitlan, into the interior of Mexico. He discovers that she can speak a language that his other interpreter, my guy, he was a Spaniard who had been shipwrecked on the coast of what is now Mexico. He didn't understand these ambassadors that were coming to Cortés. And this young woman, she did. So their communication was vital to him. And between Cortés, this other translator, Aguilar, and Malinalli, they were able to, Aguilar would translate Cortés's words from Spanish into Maya. Malinalli would take the Maya and translate it into Nahuatl, which is the language spoken by the ambassadors from Montezuma. And then you were able to establish some dialogue. But in the book, in Diaz del Castillo's book, I was just struck by here's this young girl standing between Hernán Cortés and Montezuma, translating for them, not just translating for them, but it was like her voice. She was at the center of this major confrontation, and in power. There were her words that were going back and forth, and I was just like, how did this happen? Was there something in her upbringing that prepared her for something like this? I saw her as like courageous and gutsy and wow, smart, because she was at that point. By the time she met Moctezuma, she was able to speak and understand Spanish. She's this linguistic savant who's speaking 4 languages, and I was just like, I was this shy Mexican American girl with a grasp on Spanish that was far from perfect. And that just blew me away, that she was commanding that attention and that power. And, and then I'm putting it together with the little seed that had been implanted in my brain, that this was someone really horrible and bad for Mexico, bad for Mexicans. And she's the cause, because of her, Cortés and his, band of 300 soldiers at that time were able to conquer Mexico, which is baloney. It's just bullshit. So she's this young woman shoulders the blame for this catastrophe, this horrific event, the downfall of this mighty, this amazing, what we would call today an empire, is simply ridiculous. So about 20 years ago, I got serious about writing about her, but sadly, my first attempts were just atrocious, and it wasn't even the main story. It was like I was writing around it. It was a story within a larger story, but it was the Malinalli's part that was more compelling to, I belonged to a writing group, And that story was more compelling to them and more interesting to me. But again, I felt like I was like who am I to write this story? And I thought, well, who am I? I just started researching, and the more I researched and the more I'm hearing how she was just vilified and so maligned and just so kicked around, I became even more and more convinced that I wanted to tell her story. I wanted to see the world. I wanted people to see the world through her eyes. I wanted people to know that her life did not start with Hernán Cortés.
That really struck me because I got an early copy of your book that I got to read and I really enjoyed it. And I was surprised. And then I thought, why am I surprised at how much of the book is pre-Cortés? How much you're talking about her life. And like, of course it is, because that's what she's best known for, but there's so much more about her and that doesn't define who she was. So I really appreciated how much of her pre-contact story you put in it. But also at the same time, where I'm curious is about what your research process was like, because most of what we know about her comes from the Spanish records once they interacted with her. So how did you go about figuring out what her life was like before all of that? Like, and before slavery, like the very beginning of your book when she's just living in this community and she doesn't know what life has to bring for her. Like, how did you delve into that?
Well, as you know from your previous radio cast, there's very little about her. She left us no letters, no journals, diaries, anything like that. And the story of the conquest, I mean, and even the on the ground eyewitness accounts of what happened there are limited. We have Hernan Cortez's letters to the king of Spain, 5 letters, in in which he mentions her twice. In one sentence, he refers to her as the Indian woman, la lengua, the tongue, meaning the interpreter. But it's just like in the way la lengua kind of pops off the page. It's like she's like a body part. And Diaz del Castillo talks about her, or back to Cortez. In a different letter, he names her at least Marina, and explains, how she was gifted to me, and that's kind of it. The voice he used and was able to communicate through is 2 lines in these 5 letters, as if like he figured it out all by himself. They're very self-serving letters, of course. But Diaz del Castillo spends a little bit more time talking about her, and still, it's still not much, And during like battles, he's just exclaims that she had the courage, even greater than a woman's. He admits that if not for her, they would have been killed. And so it's like, so with those limitations, I turn to indigenous accounts, and there are indigenous accounts, but many of them are filtered. The majority of them are filtered through the lens of the Spanish friars who came, immediately as soon as after Tenochtitlan, which happens in 1521. Cortez, let me back up. Cortez and Malinalli, their meeting occurs in 1519. So in 1521, when the city falls, the priest, came over very quickly from Spain, because they're on now the mission, can move forward of evangelizing these people and bringing them over to the true Christ and all that. So we have accounts that they were able to, through their interviews, and once the people were learning the Roman alphabet, some of the noble Nahua men were able to then take the stories of the elders and transcribe them to have that record. They were very good about kind of drawing the stories and of myths, and there's poems and there's war chants and there's songs. They were very good about trying to gather all of that up. But again, it's through that lens, but there are records that today now have come down to us that are a little bit more closer to the source without, that go between. And those sources include like the history of the Indies of New Spain, a general history of the things of New Spain. That's the Florentine Codex. And one thing to keep in mind, I mean, everyone thinks that everything was lost during the conquest. Is like, many of the books that the Nahuas had, they had screenfold text with their glyphs, their method for writing numbers that talked about rituals, or they didn't talk about, but they were signs for those who were like the orators, who could use these texts as kind of like when they would stand and deliver their the history of what happened on this date. And it would be set to like music and possibly dance. So there is a wealth of information kind of like on the daily life, what they wore, how they ate, cloth, textiles. There's like whole chapters about given over to textiles and, the proper raising of a young girl. And so it occurred to me that the more I read, the more I was learning about what it was like to be a woman at that time and growing up as a young girl. And I was also coming across, I'm looking at everyone considers the Mexica primarily a patriarchal culture. And I wouldn't say primarily, but the matriarchy was very strong too. In my readings, I came across a couple of notes in a couple of different places that there was a creation story about the founding of the city of Tenochtitlan, and that there was a brother and sister, and it was a fight to see who would be the leader of this group of people. The fight was between the war sun god, Huitzilopochtli, and the goddess figure, Malinalli, who was a sorceress. And the priests were behind the war god, of course. And they kind of fixed things so the Malinalli, the goddess, and her people ended up being abandoned by the brother. She was kind of like drugged and put into this dream state that she couldn't get out of. And therefore, the city of Tenochtitlan was founded by the sun god, basically, and the whole war god culture. Not to say that the goddess culture was less intimidating or war minded, but I would think that a feminine sensibility would kind of balance out a little bit the bloodlust. But she was no slouch either. And I'm thinking that she was probably the more powerful of the two, but because she was female, she had to be thwarted. She had to be stopped. And it's like everyone, the priest and Huitzilopochtli, the war god, they wanted to have the dominant. They wanted the power. So anyway, so when I found out that, and I was thinking, and I'm not the first person to think this, that it was possible that when the indigenous people saw Malinalli with Cortés, moving across, what is now Mexico, moving across the land, is it possible that they thought that she was like that returning goddess coming back to set things right and to assume the throne and kick Montezuma off his throne? I don't know. But when I read that there was this this fight between the male and female powers way back when, my imagination just blew up.
Well, and that makes me think of just when you're talking about her coming in and how people would have seen her. Which, first of all, it just would have been strange in their context and in many contexts in many cultures in the world to have this teenage girl in this position of authority and power. But I'm thinking about, I hope you know what I mean. Those images that were done at the time, those sort of like two-dimensional drawings of people. It's Cortez, and then she's always huge, like proportionately. She's massive in these. Were they? It was the local people who drew those. I think I forget, but it's her, and she's there in her the garb, the huipili. I don't know how you say it.
Rebuild. Mhm.
People who were recalling these scenes remember her as this outsized figure, so that to me that would connect. I mean, as you do in your book, like with this goddess whose name is similar to her name in the first place.
Right, right. Yeah, and the name translates into wild grass flower. Yeah, well, it's like, here she is, one of their people backed by these white men, predominantly white men, with these strange weapons, this armor. They didn't have steel, iron, with these dogs, these huge dogs, and horses. They'd never seen a horse before. It was like, to them, it was like this strange giant deer, another kind of monster. So seeing a soldier mounted on this horse thing was like I would think like looking at this two-headed beast. And so it's like, their arms, their lances, their swords are flashing in the sun. She's walking there. And, I'm thinking like, the army behind her or something, or someone sees, how she's kind of like, I don't think she's backed by this strange force of men. It's like, what, who is this? And and she's speaking for them. She's communicating, and so they're like completely, and trying to imagine that is just like, wow, who she must be. She must be very powerful. Is she a sorceress? Is she, are they here to do her bidding? Like what's going on? So there's some friction there of like who is this? So I leaned into that a lot. And that whole goddess story, I pulled it through from the beginning, and it gave me an opportunity as I was learning about women's lives to develop what it might have been like to grow up in that society, with a strong female. Her mother is very strong, and the women, there's a midwife character who is very powerful. And I wanted to concentrate on, I invented. There were priestesses in this time period. Of course, there were priests, and I knew the priest went to a special place to learn. And I thought, well, what about the priestesses? So I invent the Temple of the 18 Moons, which also, I mean, getting back to my like what in this young woman's past prepared her for this role as interpreter, and this ability to stand, front and center with all of these alpha males who kind of, were trying to sniff each other out and figure out, what to do, how to do it. Montezuma was a smart guy. I think he was smarter than Cortés as to like why he allowed them to enter and to get as far as Cortés did is the $1 million question that no one really knows why. And in my book, Malinalli knows that at any minute they can be wiped out. It's like the ambassadors come and they and present Cortés with these gold discs, silver, all of these treasures and works of feather work, which was more prized and fine cotton cloth, more prized than gold. And Cortés keeps asking, "Where's the gold? Where's the gold?" And he's promised it's in Tenochtitlan. We have to keep going. And she's trying to convince them, these gifts represent a great tribute to you and the king you say you represent. It's like any normal person would take these gifts and say, "Thank you very much," and get out and leave the country and leave, But Cortez, I mean, they're the center of the world, and everyone else must think we are. And we're here, to, on behalf of the king, to learn more about, these people. And nothing's going to stop me. And all the traditions and the rituals that were practiced and people were devoted to at this time and place. These white guys, Spaniards, had no. They didn't care. I mean, just battle practices. There was a ritual that you did before you went into battle, where there would be incest and prayers and chants, and there was a time for battle even. And I think Cortés had arrived during a time that this is not a good time for this. We don't fight during this period of time. And Cortés did, and he didn't take prisoners. They killed people quickly, and the Mexica did not do that.
What I'm just remembering from when I was doing my research a couple of years ago about this topic, it was there's that whole fallacy of just thinking that because a society doesn't have a certain technology, that they're less intelligent or they're less important or they're less whatever. And so for various reasons that I discussed on my other podcast, the Spanish came in and they had guns, they had giant ships and things. And the Mexica, they did not. But at the same time, Tenochtitlan, as I recall, was a bigger, more thriving city than like anywhere in Spain, London, England. Like it was a huge metropolis. And I think when I personally, before I learned this story, I didn't realize that society was so developed pre-contact. Like it was this huge. Somebody asked me a while ago, if you got a time machine, you could go back and see something. What would you want to see? And I said, I want to go back and see Tenochtitlan. I want to see what that looked like, because there's these people have tried to imagine it, and it was this glorious, huge, established city. And so Cortés is coming in and he has to write back to Spain to be like, oh, these people, they're so backwards. They don't know what they're doing. Where it's like, actually, they're kind of doing better than you. Their city is better. they don't have guns, but like this city is more established than anywhere in Spain.
Yeah. No, it was a wonder of the world. Cortés talks about it in his letters, Bernal Diaz, just how it was this dream of a place. It was built on a lake, and there were causeways that linked the island of Tenochtitlan to the mainland. And it's like, I picture them as like, kind of like this, the sun, with the rays of the sun, like, connecting it. And the palaces and the temples, we think of, we go to Mexico City to see the ruins now, and we think, everything was like white or gray. And it's like, no, they were painted. They were, white and yellow and red and, with blue. They were beautifully decorated. They had feathered banners, and the causeways, there were like water closets. The city was probably the cleanest city, one of the most pristine cities in the world at that time, in comparison to like London, Paris, Rome, and anywhere in Europe. I would say this city, Tenochtitlan, was by far the cleanest. There were flowers everywhere. And again, the textiles, were just magnificent. The embroidered cloth, like I said before, was more prized than gold by them. The artisans who lived within Montezuma's palace complex. I mean, he had the jewelers and the metalsmiths and the mosaic workers and the feather workers right there, working for him, working for the city. And, everything there was painted and the mosaics. Yes, I would, if I was able to go back in time, that's where I would want to go, most definitely. Everyone, they were just blown away. They had never seen anything like it. They had figured out like they had a plumbing system in the palaces. They had an aqueduct that brought into the city, fresh water from Chapultepec. And, and Cortez makes note of the wonders there that, we have nothing like this back home. He admits it. And so does Diaz. They're both kind of like, this is beyond anything that we've ever known. So yeah, it's like the Spaniards were the backwards, the barbarians by far. I mean, if we're going to get into that, which is kind of like probably not a good thing, but yeah, they were behind. There was an etiquette that was followed. There were social graces. I mean, they were just magnificent. In my point of view, it was just it was a completely it was like a different it was just a completely different world, one where beauty was expressed, and there was a dark side to it too.
I was just thinking about, so in your book, like as in the life of the real Malinalli, like she's different eras, I guess I would describe it. But, she's living with her family and then she's taken away. And then there's this period of enslavement. And then there's the period where she is with Cortez, but then she's with Cortez in this city. And then she's with Cortez in this city. Like she's kind of going from place to place. So when you were planning out the book, what would you think? What would be the through line? So it's not just like the Odyssey. It's like now she's here, now she's here. Like to have connecting between the different places where she is. Like she's the through line, really herself and her experiences. So what did you think about when you were thinking about putting her in all these different situations?
I was thinking about a young woman coming into her power, and a young woman going through various phases of her life, where in the beginning she's all questions, like, who am I? Why did you give me this name? And it's like her twin brother and her father are put to death by Montezuma, and she's just got questions. And like any young child who's faced with trauma, it's like, what is this? What's going on? And then she goes away to the Temple of the 18 Moons, where she learns about the goddess and becoming a priestess, and she learns more about Malanasochi, the warrior goddess, the sorceress, and she's like, she wants that kind of magic, that kind of power. And as she moves through her life, she's questioning that power when she's enslaved. I mean, I have no power now that I'm a slave. She thinks it's like, I am nothing, when she's kidnapped and is bought by a Maya merchant prince, in my book. And that's the point where she ends up, meeting Cortez, because she's handed over, the Maya merchant prince hands Cortez, gives his concubine away to the Spaniards as one of the as a gift. But she has an agenda. She has an agenda, and that she's going to use Cortez to get what she wants, which is to get to Tenochtitlan and to see Montezuma, to get to the bottom of a mystery. She's also seeking justice and vengeance, but she gets a little cocky, and as she kind of comes into some of her powers, she gets a little cocky and she thinks, "Oh, I know what I'm doing, because I've got this all under control." And the minute you say, you put out into the universe that you've got things under control, that things can go south, things can go bad really quickly. And she's humbled, during that process of understanding who she is, her gift, her place in the world, what she's able to manifest, and what she's able to, she becomes like the bridge between these two cultures. In my book, by accident, and it's a humbling that someone realizes, oh, I'm not that, I'm full of it, and as afraid as everyone else. And, she turns to, the goddesses for help. And, she has to continue this quest. She has to find it within herself, even after she learns that she's not as perfectly strong as she thought she was, but and yet she has her magic from the get-go, and she knows who she is, she knows what she's about, and she knows her worth and value. But she goes through a lot of trials and tribulations in order to understand that about herself, that she's had power all the time. It's just how do you use that? When do you use that? I don't know. Does that make sense? It is a quest. I mean, it was important to me to, it's so rare that we see women kind of like on a hero's journey. And that's, it was important to me. Like I said, it's like, her life did not start with Cortez. I wanted to present a woman in full. She possesses, she's got a dark side and the light, and she's a multitude of women, priestess, warrior, she was a slave, a concubine, she's a daughter, she's a sister. But it's, she's multidimensional, and with that, emotionally, it brings a lot of complications. And when I was mapping this out, because of all this movement, which I wanted to track, because it mirrors what actually happened, in their movement from, the Spaniards as they moved from the coast to the interior, to the city on the lakes. I wanted to mirror that as much as possible, because it was important that the book it's grounded, it's rooted in history, but as there's a lot of magic realism, and I push that even into fantasy because it worked. But as I was laying this out and thinking about it, I had to create a landscape of her physical movement, an interior landscape. And so, and I'm not smart enough to do all of the fancy software, where I could just kind of like, just type it out and it's done. It's like I had to do like massive like poster board charts of like, okay, with post-it notes, like here's this scene, or here's, she's in Tlaxcala, and it's like, what is she thinking, what is she seeing, what is she feeling? Because again, it's like you're seeing the world through her eyes, and feeling it and experiencing it through her senses. I hope I brought that all to life enough so you can really feel what it was like for her. It's a lot. It's a lot of trauma.
Well, no, and that's what I think too was it was really interesting. Well, I loved reading your book. It's a wonderful book. And now for a quick advertising break. And we're back. As I was going through it, I was like, oh, I remember this from when I was doing my research. I remember this, like the historical parts. I was like, oh, that part. Oh, right. And but as you described it just now, like it's all her point of view. It's her story. It's her journey. And I really appreciate, like, the title is her name. It's not just kind of this person who is dragged along on somebody else's adventure. It's very much, this is her story. She has her own goals. I don't think that that's any way dissimilar from what the actual person's life was really like. Because when you look at what she did and what she accomplished, she was obviously such a strong person who persevered through all of these wildly unexpected shifts in her life. Like the whole paradigm of what reality was changed for everybody in that region when the Spanish arrived. And she kind of found a place for herself. She found power for herself, and she kept going. Like, your book doesn't get into her whole story, but like after Cortés leaves, like she keeps finding things to do, making her own choices. And I think in your book you establish, and I really like to do how you explain this on the podcast too, like what kind of person, what kind of childhood do you have to develop the skills that she later exhibits? And I think it's probably what's in your book must be similar to what she actually went through, because she did become this person who did have this power. And even if there was another young woman with those language skills, they wouldn't have necessarily been able to do what she did. And part of that's inherent, but I think part of that is just like how she was raised and how her personality.
Yeah, we know very, very little. Bernal Diaz del Castillo talks about, in his book, he says that her mother gave her away to traders. You know, it's like he wrote his book like 40 years after, you know, the conquest, because he's everyone has an agenda. He kind of wants to get back at all of the books and the writings that are being produced by people about the conquest by people who were not there. And so he's like, I was there, I should write my own book. So he does. But it's 40 years later. And so he's, you know, he's trying to remember everything, I imagine, and trying to get it all down. Yeah. And he says that Molly's mother, to get her out of the picture, so a new husband, their son would inherit. She gives Molly away to some traders who are passing through. And I was just like, I have no doubt that things like that happened. They've happened in other places. Horrible things happen, you know, to children. And as I was reading and learning and kind of steeping myself in this.
There are many ways to entice a potential new customer with flashy branding and calculated marketing strategies. But at the end of the day, the success of a business comes down to the ability to close the sale. And for businesses like Thrive Cosmetics, Allbirds, or Skims, it's what goes on behind the scenes, making selling, and for shoppers, buying, simple, that makes the difference. For them and for millions of businesses, that difference is made with Shopify. Businesses that want to grow with Shopify. Because if your goal is growth, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And Shopify will make sure you're ready. On the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Nobody does selling better than Shopify. And with Shop Pay, they boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going. It's no wonder Shopify is home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/realm, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/realm to upgrade your selling today. That's shopify.com/realm. I'm someone who genuinely does enjoy cooking. Until it's 6 p.m. on a Thursday, I'm tired and I just cannot muster the energy to make a full meal that I'm so desperately craving. In the past, that exact scenario would usually lead me to order out, spending way too much money for food that ultimately didn't leave me feeling great. Now though, I am so happy to have a better option with Factor, and their delicious, healthy meals are ready in even less time than it'd take to order takeout. Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. Their meals are dietitian approved and are ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes. These aren't some sad frozen meals either. They all arrive fresh and fully prepared, and I genuinely look forward to my box each week. I had never really been a fan of cauliflower rice, but it was in one of my meals last week with queso fundido and ground beef, and safe to say I've changed my tune on that one. They have 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week, and you can choose from preferences like protein plus, carb conscious, and fiber filled, so it's easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. Beyond their meals, I've also really enjoyed Factor's cold pressed juices, and they've got plenty of add-ons like wholesome smoothies, breakfasts, and grab-and-go snacks, so I'm very excited to try those in my upcoming boxes as well, because my less than nutritious snacking habits are next on my list to tackle. If you're looking for convenient ways to optimize your nutrition this year, eat smart with Factor. Get started with factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code FACTORPODCAST to get 50% off your first box, plus free shipping. That's code FACTORPODCAST at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. When I was younger, I would help my little sister do her makeup for dance competitions. And while I enjoyed spending that time with her, learning about the different techniques needed to achieve the look, there were pretty strict guidelines for the stage makeup, and not much room for self-expression. I was reminded of those moments recently when I was helping one of my best friends get ready for a party. As a trans woman who came out later in life, she didn't grow up playing with makeup like I had, and we had so much fun picking just the right purples and eye glitter to match her outfit for the evening. What made us both feel beautiful that night wasn't just about the makeup, but how we were committing to showing up as ourselves and encouraging each other to do the same. That's the commitment that Thrive Cosmetics also knows well, with over 10 years of celebrating the strength and beauty of women. And they don't just talk the talk. For every product purchased, Thrive Cosmetics donates products and funds to support important causes, including domestic abuse survivors, veterans, homelessness, and LGBTQ+ communities. I feel proud getting my favorite makeup products from them, knowing that it also positively impacts people and communities I care about. And they really do carry my favorite makeup products. One that I can't get enough of is the Liquid Lash Extensions Mascara. It's the best mascara I've ever used. It doesn't clump or smudge, and my eyelashes always look dramatically longer thanks to their flake-free tubing formula. Plus, like all of Thrive Cosmetics beauty products, it's certified 100% vegan, cruelty-free, and made with clean, skin-loving ingredients. So whether it's for yourself, a sister, a friend, celebrate the women in your life with Thrive Cosmetics, luxury beauty that gives back. Right now, you can get an exclusive 20% off your first order at thrivecosmetics.com/thrive. That's Thrive Cosmetics, CAUSEMETICS.com/thrive for 20% off your first order.
Are your ulcerative colitis symptoms proving difficult to manage? Tremfya guselkumab can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. At 1 year, many patients taking Tremfya achieved clinical remission, and some patients also achieved endoscopic remission. Individual results may vary. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Ask your doctor if Tremfya can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more, or visit tremfyaradio.com.
Matriarchal, the stories of the goddesses are so magnificent. And I'm thinking, these stories came from someone, from somewhere, and it's here. It's with these people. It's with these women. And I wanted her mother to be, she claims she's, a descendant of the Toltecs, and the Toltecs were the people who brought the arts and writing and beauty, and were also fierce warriors. All of the artistic gifts, to the people, and the Mexica were quick to align themselves with descendants and the stories of the Toltecs to give themselves more prestige, to value that, their stories are now our stories as well. So I just wanted to, again, I wanted this to be a female-centric book, because there are no stories, that the stories of the conquest are through the eyes of men, and it's like men's lives and the soldiers' lives, and this guy did this and this guy did that, and God, we're here on a mission of God, and we're the heroes, and we're like, amazing, and I was just like, no. I wanted this to be about the women, and I thought to myself, for her to be standing there with such authority, I mean, she's nervous, she's a little afraid. Who wouldn't be? But at the same time, she's standing and she's communicating, she's doing what she has to do, and going even beyond that, using some magic to try to protect people, and to try to lessen the impact of what this confrontation, of the impact of this confrontation. But I was just thinking for her to stand and to think that she can actually control this situation, control these men. She was raised by some strong women, and that there were strong women in her life who prepared her for this. And I think it's that knowledge that you're a descendant of this proud, fierce line of women. Ancestry is very important in the book, and for Latinos in general, family is very important. If there wasn't, I was going to give her and imbue her with this family of strong women, either related by blood or by friendship. It's a sisterhood, and I think that kind of gave her the strength to move forward. And remembering, I don't know, but I've been in situations where I've gotten myself into this crazy predicament, and I've heard my grandmother's voice in my head, my abuela saying something to me, and I'm like, and it was the thing that I needed to hear, to know, for me to act. Out of all the things I was learning, it was like her voice in my head, and I'm like, that's what she has too. She has the memory, and she has the force of the women who came before her in her veins. So she's able to accomplish what she's able to accomplish and step up to the moment. She gets a little, as things get a little very dicey for her. Anger takes control for a bit, but yeah, it's like her fierceness kind of transforms her. And that was also a mission of the book. It's like her transformation, from a little girl to a priestess, to, it's a constant transformation from one part of her life into another, one role. And she's, she's still the little girl, at the end, when she sees something that takes her right back to when, she and her brother were, playing together down by the river.
I think it's such a perfect, like, you're so passionate about her and this story, obviously. And I think it's so wonderful when someone with that passion writes a book about it, because, like, clearly, like, your heart is on the page and you can really feel that when you're reading the book. And I wanted to ask you, because the publisher of your book, so it's Primero Sueño Press. I don't know if I said that right, which is just a new imprint that's highlighting these sorts of books. Can you talk about that?
No, it's okay. It's like my editor, Michelle Herrera Mulligan. I had, I went through multiple versions of this book. Just, I'd been working on it for a very long time. And I felt like I'd finally gotten it into a place. Well, over a period of time, I would, send out queries to agents, and nothing happened. But that didn't stop me. I just kept working. I belonged to the same writing group for like 20 years. So I would show up. I live in the Chicago area. I would jump on the train, the Green Line, and go out to Oak Park, read my 10 pages, which was a big thing for me, because up to that point, my background is in advertising, and other than doing presentations for clients, I had never read my own work out loud before. So to read it out loud was very empowering. So I would read it, and then I'd go back and I'd work on it, and back and forth. I would work on write on the weekends, do research whenever I could, on the weekends, and at night, whatever. So over time, I'm working on different. Oh, I just found out this great thing, so I'm going to work that into the book, and it was just it was quite the journey. And I finally I thought I'd gotten the piece into a place that I was really happy with. But in the meantime, rejection after rejection after rejection as far as, agents. And I was sending a completed manuscript. When I started the process, you could only, the accepted way was, you sent your manuscript to one agent at a time. And then you'd have to wait to hear back from them and then move on to the next person. So it took a long time. But in the meantime, I'm working on it and I'm writing and I'm put it aside and I write other things and other stuff. And then this opportunity came up where I could, a friend of mine said, you need to send it to, Michelle. She's at Simon and Schuster. And I'm like, you don't do that.
Mm-hmm. Sending it right to the editor instead of.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a big, you do not do that. And I said, nope, I'm not going to do that. That's crazy. And it got to the point where, oh gosh, I did it and I didn't think anything would happen. And then something happened. And I was like, I was not prepared. Because I thought, oh, it's just nothing will come of it. And I'm just gonna keep working on this until I'm, in my, 80s. Because I felt like I'm working on this story. It's my journey too, as far as like what it means to be Mexican. I mean, I'm Mexican American, but during the course of writing this book, I know for certainty, and I'm going to cry now, that my heart and my soul, soy Mexicana, that I'm Mexican. So, I mean, I live this, feel like she's still inside me, this character. So it's quite powerful to see her out in the world right now. And the editor, Michelle at editor Mulligan at Simon and Schuster, she saw what I had done and what I was, attempting to do with this real life, historical figure, with this, horrible, God, the mythology and the what she's had to shoulder for centuries. She understood what I was trying to get at. And so everything kind of happened for me a little bit backwards. And during the course, the imprint was Atria, which is a division of Simon and Schuster. And during, as I was like working on the manuscript, they gave my editor her own imprint. And Primero Sueño Press, Primero Sueño it's based on a poem by Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, which I love that connection, because here's another strong, powerful woman, intelligent and brave and courageous, who also in her way bucks the system and carves out her own identity, her life, with her writings and her books, and is one of the most magnificent writers ever, as far as I'm concerned. So I don't know how you're going to take that and make it sound interesting, but it was crazy the way it happened. And like I said, I didn't think, I don't know, I would probably still be working on this, but she's gifted, and I feel like I was still kind of trying to play within certain boundaries, I had to, once I found an agent, we spent a Thanksgiving taking, God, I think of my earliest manuscript was like 600 pages down to like 4, and then even, kept working our way down from that. So it was a process. It was rewriting. The core of it was always there. The magic was always there. The embroidery threads coming to life, it was always there. The Temple of the 18 Moons and the House of Magical Studies, that was a constant. And it was just like, people wanted like just more more, and wanted to hear more, even more from the women. So I was just like, oh, I'm happy to do that, and to like sideline Cortez a bit more, and um, and to present Montezuma as a figure who was, like I said before, was very smart. Don't know why he didn't, put a kibosh on the Spaniards earlier. And he had a zoo, he had an animal house, he had a botanic garden. He amassed this world of texts and books and talent and artisans. And at the same time, with a lift of an eyebrow, he could have pulled together an army of warriors to stomp out and to destroy people. I mean, he was intense. And then dealing with Cortez, it's like no one was prepared for a people who had no boundaries, you know, and just like moved through. I mean, Montezuma was considered like a man god. And there are reports that they thought that maybe the Spaniards, that Cortez was like the second coming of Quetzalcoatl, which is also kind of ridiculous. I think after the conquest, people were like looking for a reason, like, why did this happen to us? You know, and it's like, the reason, one reason, that the Cortez was the second coming of this God figure, that Montezuma was hesitant to harm him. And it's like, I don't think that was it.
In your book, that's where I love that, because that's still sort of a widespread myth that the people there thought that Cortez was a god. But then I love in your book, you're like, but what if people thought that Malinalli was the goddess?
Exactly.
I love that in your book, you inverted that
Yep.
kind of expectation. Yep. I just wanted to say, sorry.
Yeah, no, yeah. And she's working, and he's working for her, possibly. Yeah, I thought, like, I had this opportunity and this myth. And so I leaned into that. And the character starts to believe it, which is a problem.
Yeah.
And doesn't work out. Yeah, no, I was just like, what if? My dad was a journalist, and one thing he would tell us over and over again is to ask questions. So from the get-go, I had questions, and when I would uncover some a bit of research or see something that really sparked my imagination, I'd be like, what if? Just often running to build on that. But again, it's like much of this is grounded in the history. That grounding gave me a sense of freedom to kind of like to really reach and to lean into certain themes, and to lean into the magic realism and fantasy in a different way, and cross boundaries in my writing, because I was like, can I do this? And unless someone told me no, you can't do that. You can't do that in this book, or it's like, that doesn't make any sense. It's like, no, everyone was just like, more.
I was just looking at just more information about your editor and about this press, and it just seems like such a perfect marriage of, like, again, just like strong women supporting each other, but also what I'm reading about this press, like the whole, like, it's launching. I think your book is one of the first titles coming out from this imprint.
Yes.
Primero Sueño Press. And it's about Malinalli. And that's just so perfect, because I'll just read for people so they know. Primero Sueño Press will serve English and Spanish speakers seeking identity, culture, inspiration, entertainment, wellness, and personal development. The imprint will publish fiction and nonfiction with universal appeal that honors and plays with genre. And I mean, that's just what you're saying. And the way that your book plays with genre, it's so much within the context, like it fits within that magical realism that you see in so much like Latine storytelling and in books. But then, so you have magic, but it ties back to the culture that you were researching. So I love that they were just pushing you to put more of that in, because it seems like that's exactly what this imprint is about. And so your book found exactly the right home, clearly.
Yeah, no, I worked with my team, predominantly women, and they were my cheerleaders between, my agent, my editor, and assistant editors. They were just marvelous, and at no point did I feel that I couldn't express myself the way I wanted. That I felt safe. I felt safe with them. I felt that this was a perfect home for Malinalli. It wouldn't, the sensibility, the sensitivity, and the hunger to know more, to go ahead. It's like, I have sentences with names like Huitzilopochtli and Quetzalcoatl, and I have touches. I use words in Nahuatl, and there was, yes, like more. It's like, and I never. It was it was just it's been an amazing experience for me to be embraced like that, and to be valued like that, and to have somebody working with me to make these words sing, and to make it come to life. Watching my grammar back, because I don't know about you, but sometimes I get a little comma happy. Um, but
Yep.
Yeah, no, it was my tribe. I found my tribe,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it's been extraordinary. So, yeah.
Well, it's just a sort of a final question. I've been curious ever since I first encountered your book. How did you choose what name to call her?
No.
Given there's La Malinche, there's Malintzin, there's Malinalli. Like, how did you decide which? And in the book, often like they call her Mali. How did you decide which name to use?
Malinalli is her day sign name. Historians, researchers, it's controversial as to what name was she born with. Doesn't matter. Yes, it matters. I mean, it matters to me that, my mom said, from the get go, says you were going to be Veronica. So it's like Malinalli was her day sign name. And I just thought it's like the closest to her Nahua origins. So it's an ancient word. It's an ancient name, and it's steeped in, being a member of this land, of what is now Mexico, and this language and this culture. All of the other names, Malintzin was given, it was based on, taking part of her name, and adding the TZIN, which denoted, someone of nobility, and denoted prestige. And out of that Malintzin, the Spaniards heard Malinche. They didn't hear it correctly. And it's like, and that's removed for me from who she is. Doña Marina, forget about it.
No,
That's
no.
that's the Spaniards.
Yeah.
And Malinche, because Malinche is such, uh, for me,
Well,
is
you said it felt like a slap when you heard
yeah.
it.
When the
Yeah.
when I, the first time I heard it, it sounded, it was uttered with contempt, and to be called like a malinchista, which is still being used. That means traitor, and that means, and it has a lot of other meanings. There's a lot of other meanings in there, and I'm like, nope. It took us a while, because it was a group effort to be that bold, and forthright, for that to be the name of the book. Over the years, I had all of these, the woman in the obsidian mirror. I mean, mirrors play an important part throughout the story, and mirrored images, and obsidian mirrors were used to see into the future, and all of this, and all kinds of, like, kind of old school romantic sounding names and titles and all this stuff. And it was just kind of like coming around to, it was like its own journey, and presenting, no, this is her story through her eyes, what she's feeling, her, it's her. And it's like I said, there's such power. God, just when I saw the book cover, just seeing, I was just like, oh my, it's there's so much power.
I just wanted to say that, like, I felt that power when I was just scrolling through a list of, like, upcoming books, and I saw a book called Malinalli, and that caught, if I had seen, like, The Woman in the Obsidian Mirror, I might have scrolled past that, but it said Malinalli, and I was like, "Wait a minute, is this could this book be about this woman?" And it was. So it called out to me. So it's a great title, I think.
Yeah, that was a team effort to get there, because yeah, I was like, so inside the story, that it took, like, the voice from over here to say, let's bring it back. And I'm like, perfect. But it's like, I'm so, God, I'm so thrilled that here we are, the first day of Women's History Month, to be talking about her. And I was thinking about how, God, the stars have lined up, because in good ways, and in kind of scary ways, because it's like right now we're living in a time period where women are every, God, the beginning of the year, it seemed like every day it's like someone in the modern world, a woman was being vilified and scapegoated for something that went wrong. And it made me think of her, Malinalli. And it's like, we're, I mean, men will always do this, right? If there's, when it comes to authority figures, women with voices, women with power, strong women, who are out there communicating to the world. If when something goes amiss, it's that has nothing to do with, it's outside the control of women. It's still our fault.
Yeah.
So it happens over and over again, and thinking about the systems, the patriarchy and the machismo system, and how Malinalli has been, used as an emotional, like I'm going to say football, the American football, and just depending on which way the political winds were blowing, and what the mood was, we need a figure that we could just project all of our hate onto, hate that this conquest occurred, hate that, things aren't going well, like, whatever, because there has been no story. There is no story of her. She left us nothing, so it's like we can do whatever, people feel like we can do whatever we want with her. So, by kind of like putting a story out there, and I am not the first person to look at her, to consider her, and frame her in a different way. Women have been looking, Chicanas, Mexican American women, have been looking at her story, since the 70s. And remember, I was going through my library of books. And I have a book, The Goddess of the Americas, which was edited by Ana Castillo. And it's basically writings on the Virgin of Guadalupe. But throughout the book, there are essays and poetry which look at the indigenous, the Mesoamerican pantheon, and talking about the goddesses, and the ancient indigenous version of the Virgin of Guadalupe is Tonantzin, the earth goddess. And it's now I've lost my point. Anyway.
Well, just sort of the legacy of her story and how what I am thinking of right now is just sort of how women in so much of history in so many places can be the scapegoat, but then also you see these lineages, like you were saying, the Virgin of Guadalupe, and like women who are revered and respected. And it's kind of like two sides of just kind of these legacies. And neither of them is like looking at this person as a human being. It's all just like, what can she represent and to who? And it's kind of positive in one side and it's negative in one side. But for me, like for Women's History Month, which I love that this is when we're having this conversation, when your book is coming out as well, is just looking at these were people. These were not mythical, magical goddesses. I mean, in your book, kind of. But it's like these were human beings with like good sides and bad sides, and they were just people, and we want to celebrate them, but we also don't want to put them on such a high pedestal that it's kind of meaningless.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, it's like it's a woman in full, and it's like her. I'm hoping, presenting a human being who was presented with one tragedy, trauma after another, and is able to pull herself forward. I think it might be difficult for some people. It's like, oh my God, all this stuff happens to her over and over again, and it's hard. But the lives of women, it is hard.
I do think that it's, for me, doing this podcast, which just kind of keeps me always in this women's history mode when things are getting overwhelming or scary and intense like they are lately. I do find when I look back at the stories of people like Malinalli who lived through these seemingly impossible circumstances and kept going. And,
Right.
Whether it's a story of somebody who is, a queen, or somebody who is a worker, or somebody like her who is just trying to find her place in the world. Like, to me, to see like women who just keep going, even in the face of what seems like insurmountable odds,
Mhm.
helps me to keep going. So I think in that way, your book is also very timely and almost reassuring, to see like she went through all of this, so I can go through what I'm going through,
Right. Yeah, she's able to navigate a way forward, and again, it's tapping into like an ancestry, tapping into spiritually, the way what she's learned, how she's been raised, and to keep moving forward. And the ending was where it's like I've moved forward, and I'm preparing for the next Malinalli, the next person to come forward to take over and to carry us the rest of the way. So and that's what we do for each other. We make way and help and provide a way and provide the resources and provide the words and the encouragement and the support to make way, to create a path forward for the next generation of women to protect themselves, prepare them to protect each other. How do we fight? How do we fight back? Through our voices. Just remember, it's like we each one of us has a voice that we can use, and some of us are gifted with the command of languages to drive, to communicate and drive home our points even more thoroughly. And that's a beautiful and that's a rich thing. And the more we know about each other, the stronger we become as a community and as a people. Yeah, hope is a big theme of the book, and there's always hope. There is hope. Period.
I think that's a beautiful point to end our conversation on. And I think, I mean, thank you for writing this book. It just seems like blessed that it found, just like you said, just the right group of people to really elevate it and to push you in these directions, to expand on kind of these different aspects of it that make it such a special and interesting and unique book. And I hope, as you're going out and promoting it this month, that you just get so much love and affection back when it, like, this book clearly means so much to you. And I think that's going to resonate with so many people when they read it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to me. I'm such a nerd when it comes to some of this. And like you said, I have to learn how to, not to have my heart on my sleeve, when I'm talking about her. So
I think honestly, the fact that you so have your heart on your sleeve talking about her, I think that's so affecting. And I think that's going to really make a lot of people want to read your book even more.
Thank you. This has been a thrill and an absolute delight. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you so much for joining me. So, I mean, if that interview doesn't get you wanting to read this book, I don't know what would. It's such a good book. Malinalli by Veronica Chapa, available wherever you get your books, if you're in North America. So yeah, order it from your favorite independent bookstore, get it from your local library, tell your library to get it. Just like, it's such an important book. It's such a good book. And I mean, Malinalli could not possibly have a more passionate advocate sharing her story out there in the world than Veronica. I really appreciate that she took the time to talk to me about her book. And so, yeah, Vulgar History is a podcast you're listening to. It's Women's History Month, and all month we're going to be talking about women from history. We do that every month, but, with a special Women's History Month lens. Anyway, I also am an author to be. My book, Rebel of the Regency, the scandal saga of Caroline of Brunswick, Britain's uncrowned queen, is going to be coming out next year. And there's nonstop updates about what's happening with the book. Like, I'm editing the book, I'm getting headshots taken, like, I'm just various things. I'm getting permission from Buckingham Palace for pictures in the book. There's lots to keep up with. If you want to know the latest news about me and my book, like, when is it going to go on pre-order? When can you order a copy of it? The best and easy one-stop shopping way to get those updates from me, and also podcast updates and other things, is to join my brand newish mailing list, which is once a month. I'll just send you kind of the highlights of, like, what's going on, what's the latest book news, what's the latest podcast news. I put in some book and movie recommendations as well, and you can sign up for that newsletter by going to vulgarhistory.com/news. And if you're like, I listen to this podcast, I like Anne's talking voice, I have been told I sound like a white female Barack Obama, which was a compliment that I take to heart. But if you want to know what my writing is like, because, I'm writing a book also, I have a Substack newsletter where I write about women from history, and that is at vulgarhistory.substack.com. I post there a free article every 2 weeks. And also, actually, I want to say, no, I'll say this first. So you can support this podcast by joining my Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/AnneFosterWriter, you can join for free. I post lots of shit there. I post interesting links, more book and movie recommendations. I think it's just, you can join the Patreon for free. And that's where I'm just trying to divest from being so dependent on various social media channels, because then you're kind of at the whims of these, like, asshole social media company owners and their, like, fucked up algorithms. And it's like, I just want to share my shit with the people who care about it. And I found that Patreon is a place where you can do that. So you can join my Patreon for absolute free. Go to patreon.com/AnneFosterWriter, and you will see the free stuff that I post there, which is just kind of like conversation stuff and, like, links and interesting articles and stuff that previously I might have posted on Instagram or somewhere. But then also, I've been posting free podcasts there, which are book writing updates. So you can get those there, all at the free tier. Also at the free tier recently, I posted an episode there, a new Patreon spin-off podcast. I don't know how many of these I'm going to do, but it's called Vulgar Words Boycott. And I explain the etymology, why we call it a boycott when people are encouraged to stop purchasing things from a certain place. And it's because there was this shitty English landlord whose name was Charles Boycott, and he was being shitty to people in Ireland where he owned some farms. And so they decided to just stop fucking with him. They just decided to stop working for him. They decided if he went to a store, they wouldn't sell him anything. They invented the concept of a boycott, and then he left Ireland because they were so successful. Irish people, whenever they show up in any story, just legends, truly. So anyway, I did an episode there, and you can join. Free members of my Patreon can hear vulgar words, boycott. That's one of the things you can get access to if you join there. And then if you also feel so inclined, and I never want to pressure anybody, especially in this economy, but if you pledge $1 a month, you can also get free early access, ad-free access to all episodes of Vulgar History. You get that through the Patreon as well. And then if you are so inclined, and if you can afford it in this economy, for $5 a month, if you pledge $5 a month to me on Patreon, you get access to bonus episodes on there as well, including episodes of So This Asshole, where I talk about shitty men from history, including Hernán Cortés. And also, if you join the Patreon for $5 a month or more, you get to join our very elite salon, our Discord channel, which is where we chat about various things, emotionally support one another, share pictures of our pets. It's a group chat. So anyway, patreon.com/AnnFosterWriter. Join it for free. Join it for $1 a month. Join it for $5 a month. Whatever you want to do. Also, I do want to mention our brand partner, Common Era Jewelry, which is, we've been working with them, and by working with them, I mean like talking about them on my podcast for a while. And it's really exciting to see when new collections drop. And they just dropped a new collection. So just to remind you, Common Era Jewelry is a woman-owned small business that makes beautiful heirloom jewelry inspired by women from history and also by classical history in general, from mythology and things like that. I've talked before about their gorgeous designs inspired by women from history and myth, and I'm excited to let you know that based on popular demand, they now have a new collection of zodiac jewelry. And so Tori, who's the owner of Common Era Jewelry, when she was talking about this new collection, she was saying like, so many people do zodiac jewelry. She didn't want to just like do this, like her version of the same sorts of things. And then she found this obscure 17th century alchemical manuscript. This is why, Tori and I work together on this, because I would also be excited to find an obscure 17th century alchemical manuscript. So this new zodiac collection from Common Era reimagines zodiac jewelry through the lens of ancient alchemical wisdom. Each pendant features an ancient sigil crafted under precise astrological conditions, once believed to hold protective and transformative powers. More than adornment, these pieces are modern talismans, symbols of connection, intention, and the timeless magic of the stars. So these and all their pieces are available in solid gold, as well as in more affordable gold vermeil. Although I will mention that the Zodiac collection, the gold vermeil, is a bit delayed. So if you go there, you can sign up to be like on the waiting list for the gold vermeil versions of those, if that's what you're interested in. Whatever you get from Common Era, Vulgar History listeners can always get 15% off all items by going to commonera.com/vulgar or using code vulgar at checkout. If you want to get Vulgar History merchandise, that is available at the newly revamped Vulgar History merchandise store. You know how it used to be, if you looked at it before. You log onto the site and it's kind of like, here's a t-shirt, here's a pin, here's a mug, and they all have different designs. And you have to like click on the t-shirt and then scroll down to see what other products you can get that design on. And it was kind of confusing. It looks a little bit more straightforward now. Like you just log in there, it's straight up. It's just, here's the pictures of the designs, which are all designs that are done by artists who I've hired and paid appropriate amounts of money to. No AI generated nonsense in our merch store. Anyway, so go to vulgarhistory.com/store if you're in the US and you want some merchandise from a Canadian person. If you're outside the US, the shipping is a bit better if you go to vulgarhistory.redbubble.com. You can also get in touch with me using the form at vulgarhistory.com. It says like contact me or something like that. You can also email me if you want, vulgarhistorypod@gmail.com. I'm on various social media. Just look for Vulgar History Pod, and there I will be, chances are. Next week's episode is another new episode, and I'm going to be talking to an author, and it's a really exciting author interview. Again, it's an author whose name I've said on the podcast before because I have used several of her books to research previous episodes, and now she has a new book talking about an old fave and a new fave. Anyway, next week it's gonna be good. And yeah, America, like what I can do for you is provide you a podcast every week, distract you from the horrors, and that is what I will continue doing. It's Women's History Month. Let's fuck shit up and keep your pants on and your tits out. Vulgar History is researched, written, and hosted by Anne Foster. That's me. The editor is Christina Lumagi. Theme music is by the Severn Duo. The Vulgar History Show image is by Deborah Wong. Transcripts are written by Aveline Malik. Find transcripts of recent episodes at vulgarhistory.com.
Hello, I am Kristen Russo.
And I am Jenny Owen Youngs.
We are the hosts of Buffering the Vampire Slayer once more with spoilers, a rewatch podcast covering all 144 episodes of, you guessed it, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
We are here to humbly invite you to join us for our 5th Buffy prom, which, if you can believe it, we are hosting at the actual Sunnydale High School. That's right. On April 4th and 5th, we will be descending upon the campus of Torrance High School, which was the filming location for Buffy's Sunnydale High, to dance the night away to 90s music in the iconic courtyard, to sip on punch right next to the Sunnydale High fountain, and to nerd out together in our prom best inside of the set of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
All information and tickets can be found at bufferingcast.com/prom. Come join us.
Listening to a podcast should be time well spent, and I promise it will be if you'll give this podcast a try. It's called Something You Should Know. I'm the host, Mike Carruthers, and in every episode, I talk with leading experts on topics I know you will find fascinating. From why people can't keep secrets, what your favorite music says about you, why your pet acts in strange ways, and so much more. Something You Should Know is designed to give you information you can use in your life and give you great intel that you can share with others. I'm told it's a binge-worthy podcast, and with over 1,000 episodes, there's a lot to binge on. Something You Should Know has been ranked in the top of the Apple Podcast charts consistently for a long time. I know you're going to like this. I just need to get you to try it. Something You Should Know. It's available wherever you listen to podcasts.
I'm Amy Nicholson, the film critic for the LA Times.
And I'm Paul Scheer, an actor, writer, and director. You might know me from The League, Veep, or my non-eligible for Academy Award role in Twisters.
We love movies, and we come at them from different perspectives.
Yeah, like Amy thinks that, Joe Pesci was miscast in Goodfellas, and I don't.
He's too old. Let's not forget that Paul thinks that Dune 2 is overrated.
It is.
Anyway, despite this, we come together to host Unspooled, a podcast where we talk about good movies, critical hits,
fan favorites, must-sees, and in case you missed them.
We're talking Parasite to Home Alone.
From Grease to The Dark Knight.
We've done deep dives on popcorn flicks. We've talked about why Independence Day deserves a second look.
And we've talked about horror movies, some that you've never even heard of, like Ganja and Hess.
So if you love movies like we do, come along on our cinematic adventure.
Listen to Unspooled wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget to hit the follow button.